If this story has touched your heart, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Your support gives me the motivation to keep sharing more real and emotional stories. Thank you for being here and being part of this community. Hello, I'm Rachel, and I need to discuss something that I've been holding within for far too long. Listen to my narrative before passing judgment. I never imagined that I would end up in this predicament, and I still find it difficult to comprehend how things got out of control so fast. My spouse asked me to do something that completely changed my life in ways I never anticipated, and I've been plagued by that recollection for years. It all began many years ago. My spouse, John, and I had been wed for about a decade. We had experienced ups and downs, like other couples, but I never anticipated this. John used to be a caring guy, but things changed with time. He became less loving, more domineering, and more aloof. I made an effort to ignore it, convincing myself that it was just work-related stress, but I felt something wasn't right. John had an odd energy when he returned home from work one evening. Although he seemed exceptionally cheerful, there was something unnerving about the way he gazed at me. He invited me to sit down as I was ready to do the dishes after our customary supper. His tone was solemn, so I obeyed, sensing that this was not going to be a routine talk, and my heart began to race. "I've been thinking," he began, averting his gaze. "I have to tell you about something." I waited for him to continue by nodding, but what he said next surprised me. He informed me that he had been bored, and that he felt it was time to try something new to liven up our relationship. I first assumed he was referring to a romantic retreat, or maybe some therapy to reignite the passion. However, that was not what he meant at all. "I have 2 guys for us to meet. They're coming over this weekend," he said plainly. I looked at him, unable to make out what he was saying. His attitude was deadly serious, but I wasn't sure whether he was kidding or if the question was some kind of strange test. I had a rush of nausea as my stomach twisted. 2 men. "What do you mean?" I asked in barely a whisper. He tried to sound informal as if this was commonplace when he added, "They're friends of mine. Together, we will spend the night with them." I couldn't speak. As I attempted to take in what he was saying, my hands began to shake. My spouse wasn't this person. I hadn't promised to live my life with this person. He was discussing the introduction of 2 strangers into our marriage and our home, as if it were a minor matter. Just thinking about it made me feel ill more than anything. However, I felt deceived. How could he possibly make such a suggestion? "Have you gone insane?" "John." My voice trembled with a combination of incredulity and rage when I finally managed to pronounce it. "We're not like this. Why would you even—" But he interrupted me before I could say anything further. "This is happening, Rachel," he stated sharply. "You must comprehend. I'd want to have it. It's a necessity." What I was hearing was unbelievable. Even though I loved John, I couldn't comprehend why he was pressuring me to do something so humiliating. This pressure seemed to have the potential to destroy everything we had worked so hard to achieve. I expressed that I wasn't comfortable with the idea, hoping we could move forward without further discussion. I hoped he would reconsider and give up on the idea. However, I was mistaken. John became increasingly aloof during the course of the next several days. He hardly spoke to me outside of discussing the strategy. He began arriving home late, and he gave me evasive explanations when I questioned him about his whereabouts. The affection that used to permeate our house was replaced by a stifling quiet, and our talks become hostile. I felt lost, alone, and perplexed. What had happened to our marriage? The fear had taken root in my chest by Friday. Regardless of what I stated, John insisted that the meeting was taking place. I thought about packing my things and heading out the door. However, I didn't. A part of me was still clinging to the person I believed I knew, as much as I hated to acknowledge it. I hoped that the situation was just a phase. There was something we could resolve. I wasn't prepared to end our shared existence. However, the idea of carrying out his plan was too much for me to handle. Saturday night came too soon. At 8 p.m., the men, John's alleged friends, arrived on time. Trying not to cry, I sat on the sofa with my fists gripped in my lap. They were in my living room talking to my husband like old friends, and I had no idea who they were. I could feel their eyes on me, and the tension in the air was palpable. Observing, awaiting, I wanted to vanish. I wanted to leave the house without looking back. John then put his hand on my knee and leaned over to me. "It's time, Rachel," he muttered. I froze, my body refusing to move despite my mind's cries for me to get up and go. John's hand was like a weight, binding me to my knee. The situation felt overwhelming, and I couldn't bring myself to engage with the people who were there. The room seemed like it was closing in on me, and my heart was thumping in my chest. "Please, Rachel," John repeated, his tone now softer, almost begging. I paused because of something in his tone. It went beyond simple demand. It was desperate. I saw a glimmer of vulnerability in his eyes for the first time in days. For him, the affair was more than simply a way to fulfill some deranged vision. It had to do with power, control, and something more profound that I was unable to fully comprehend. That didn't make it right. However, the situation didn't feel right. Finally, my voice breaking, I murmured, "I can't do this. John, we're not like this." With a heavy sigh, he reclined. He rubbed his irritated temples. "Do you believe I'd like this?" He whispered more to himself than to me. "Rachel, I'm undertaking this for our benefit. Don't you understand that?" "No, you're not." I found a glimmer of strength and fired back. "For yourself. You are doing this. John, you've changed. The issue is no longer about us. It has to do with control." I briefly believed I saw remorse flicker over his face, but it vanished as soon as it appeared. Rather, he tightened his jaw and got to his feet, pacing the room like a lost man. I wanted to get in contact with him. I wanted to bring him back to the person I knew before. However, I had no idea how. We had come a long distance, and I doubted we would ever be able to find our way back. One of the males, let's call him Marcus, cleared his throat while the two of us remained silent. Despite his apparent awareness of the tension, he exuded impatience. "Look," he remarked in a forceful but composed tone, "if this doesn't happen, we should probably move on." For the first time, I gave him a serious look as I peered up at him. I didn't anticipate him. His manner appeared more empathetic than I had anticipated, and he was composed and even courteous. Contrary to my initial assumptions, these guys were not predators. They were just human, and for some reason, it further complicated the problem. I had no desire to remain. This was turning into something I would rather not be a part of. However, the burden of everything, the years I spent with John, our past love, and the hope that things may return to normal, somehow kept me seated there. I had no idea what to do. I felt overwhelmed and trapped in my own uncertainty. John then spoke in a calm but determined tone. "Rachel, please leave." The remarks hit me hard. I tried to make sense of what he had just said as I stared at him in shock. I had to decide which side I would stand on when he drew a line in the sand. Tears started to form in my eyes, but I blinked them away so he wouldn't see me cry. He went on in a calm but icy tone. "I've given you everything. I've taken care of you and loved you, and all I'm asking for is this one thing." With unsteady but resolute legs, I got to my feet. I murmured, scarcely raising my voice above a whisper, "John, this isn't love. Such behavior is manipulation." I no longer cared that his eyes flared with rage. This was not something I could accomplish. I wouldn't have done this. I fully expected him to shout, grab me, and try to stop me as I turned toward the door. However, he didn't. Rather, I overheard him remark something along the lines of, "You'll repent this." Perhaps I would. Perhaps it was a mistake to leave. However, I knew I had to go at that very time. John or anyone else couldn't make me do anything I would rather not do. The cold evening air struck my face as I went outdoors, and I experienced a weird combination of sadness and relief. My thoughts were racing as my legs propelled me along the street. Where would I go? How would I respond? I felt deeply betrayed and lost, but I had no solutions. After what seemed like hours of wandering, I finally found myself in front of my closest friend Sarah's home. Hoping she was home, I knocked on the door. When she opened the door and saw my tears-smeared face, she asked no questions. She just walked me inside and embraced me tightly. I remained with Sarah for the following 3 days as I tried to take in all that had transpired. I experienced a profound sense of loss. Although I knew I couldn't go back, I still missed John. Given the extent of the damage, there was no way to repair it. John made many attempts to contact me and left voicemails ranging from furious to regretful. He was erratic, and I was unable to follow his changing moods after I didn't return any of his calls. He finally gave up. Months passed before I finally began to rebuild my life. I filed for divorce because I knew we couldn't save our marriage, although that was the most difficult choice I had ever made. It turned out to be the correct one. Being coerced and pushed into circumstances that contradicted my values made it impossible for me to continue in a relationship. I still sometimes reflect on John and the life we may have had if circumstances had been different. However, I've realized that I'm worthy of better. Instead of dominance and manipulation, I deserve a relationship based on mutual respect, trust, and understanding.